our economy cannot continue to not value nature or carbon. What will happen is we will explode the planet and collapse the entire economy and have a zero economy. That's the vector. The only question is, when do we decide to make this pivot?
Welcome to The Regeneration Will Be Funded. This is a show about regenerative finance. We are exploring pathways to a life-affirming economy. I'm pleased to bring you today's guest, Will Marshall. He is the founder and CEO of Planet. We've had Will on the show last year, and so happy to have you back, Will, for a quick conversation here at New York Climate Week.
Happy to be back.
Yeah, and I don't want to bury the lead. You have some big news to share, please.
Yeah, I mean, we're here in New York for a number of reasons, but the main reason is we're announcing our first global forest carbon data set. So it's a world first, actually, because of the nature of it, but it's basically every forest, every tree, and every quarter will be estimating the amount of carbon in those trees. And that's critical for underpinning our carbon markets, and we need scalable, accurate measurements of forest carbon. I can give a bunch of context to this, but as we discussed last time, when Planet set out its mission, launching a couple of hundred satellites now, image the whole landmass of the Earth every day at about 3-meter resolution. The canonical use case was getting down to an individual tree.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that for 7 years, every day. Of course, there's clouds, but pretty much every day we try at least. And so we've been working with 64 countries on tracking deforestation. Fantastic recent results with Brazil. I don't think they had come in since we were here, but basically we've been working with the Brazilian government with this automatic road detection across the whole Brazilian Amazon, 8 million square kilometers. And last year alone, they did 3,000 interventions, catching $3 billion worth of illegal assets, illegal mining, illegal deforestation equipment, and most importantly, reducing deforestation rates by over 50%.
Wow.
In the first year. So if you have a cooperative government, this tool, AI, it's great. But we want to go further, and that is to get into the help underpin the carbon markets. And carbon markets have been plagued by, it's either been people with tape measures around tree trunks, which is accurate but not scalable, or it's been scalable systems that haven't been accurate enough that led to greenwashing claims. And we believe this is the first global, accurate, scalable forest carbon system. And our goal is to help those that are trying to do in the voluntary carbon market and in the government one to enable a digital MRV system for carbon and underpin all of those efforts. And there's Microsoft and Google that want to offset their carbon and they can't find enough credits. And then there's the EUDR, which is driving companies to say they have to show that they didn't cause deforestation. And actually, this data product can really help with that. But in the end, I think it will be every country and every company that will have to balance its carbon books. We talked a little bit about this last time. And this is the data set that I think can help that. Yeah. We're one of many actors that are necessary to make that system work. But everyone agrees that we need the square one to be the measurement system.
Yeah. So basically, you have satellites wrapped around the planet right now, taking images every single day, and you've been doing this for 7 years. And this new advancement is essentially at a 3-meter resolution using LiDAR, both the airborne and the satellite space LiDAR. That's right. To essentially, along with kind of AI enhancements of the
and
data
artificial multispectral imagery
and the imagery to detect at all the way down to a granular tree level up to forest level the changes that are happening in those trees, which gives you a carbon extrapolation as well as canopy cover.
That's right.
As well as canopy height.
Correct.
And that is essentially what you're saying is that can really be a solid foundational piece, that we can start to count on more reliably for tracking, measuring carbon to inform these both voluntary and compliance markets that are emerging with the EU deforestation regulation.
Right. And it's not perfectly accurate.
Yeah.
But nor is tape measures around tree trunks.
Right.
And so there's challenges with every method.
Right.
But we have spent a lot of time on that scientific calibration with LiDAR in local areas, and then testing it and calibrating it to ground sampling. And we believe it's a pretty damn accurate system and enough to get going. And it's important that we get going because per the theme of New York Climate Week, it's time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also, there's an important point about that scalability does create the enabling conditions for smaller landholders or forests to be participants in the carbon markets because they might not have the capital required to hire the ecologist to come do the tape measures around the trees because by the time you pay for that cost, it offsets any potential revenue. It doesn't make sense. Whereas if you start having these kind of really low marginal cost methods for being able to understand forest and tree progression, then in theory, we can start to think about how to get, essentially smaller payments to smaller landholders, which has been a big critique of the carbon markets, right? Is that only the large actors are really participating.
100%. But even the large actors can't get enough quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone's stuck.
Right.
But most importantly, we are not getting to scale value of carbon, and we've got to get to nature too, into our economic system,
right?
Because we're limited by the scaling,
right?
So we've got to move from billions being spent on this to trillions.
Yeah,
like that's the rough order of magnitude, right?
Yeah,
and so that is going to demand this at scale. I was at a meeting here at the UN with the 8 countries, and it's a shame it's only 8 that are carbon neutral or carbon negative. So it's Bhutan, Costa Rica, Panama, a few countries, Madagascar. There's Guyana. Anyway, there's. But that should be a club that everyone wants to get into. By the way, we should be incentivizing and promoting them.
Yeah.
So maybe a formation of a group around that, and we're trying to support it. But imagine those countries that have spent a lot of work doing all the right things, so protecting their forests, like Costa Rica and Bhutan have both significantly increased their forests, now have something like 80% forest cover, back from what it was under 50% for both those countries at a certain time, as I understand. And no one's valuing that effort. And both of those countries are poor. Bhutan in particular is quite poor. They can't pay their debt. They can't, repay their loans to the IMF, the World Bank. And here they are sitting on this incredibly valuable asset that for the rest of the world is enabling us to breathe. Because they're net carbon, absorbers. And so we, rather than emitters like the rest of the countries, so we should be, rewarding that so much.
Totally.
But we can't until we get the system square and we all get on the same page about what's there in terms of carbon.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I think when we were sitting down a year ago, I felt like the carbon markets were floundering and subject to a lot of critique. Since then, it's felt like they're devastated with, just even more criticism. And it's kind of an audacious thing to be leaning in and saying, and now here's a new data set and here's a new way that we can track carbon, because a lot of people are actually going the opposite direction and saying, this is not the solution. And I know you are passionate and, we've had conversations about you're not narrowly focused on carbon. You're saying all of nature has to be brought into the fold. In our conversation a year ago, you said ecocide is more important than climate change even. So help me reconcile why this particular strategic move at this stage.
Well, look, there are rightful criticisms of some of the systems that have been done. If people are double counting, if there's inaccuracies, for sure, we've got to deal with that. But this is a nascent system, and we've got to do it. Our economy cannot continue to not value nature or carbon. What will happen is we will explode the planet and collapse the entire economy and have a zero economy. That's the vector. The only question is, when do we decide to make this pivot? As Alan Stern put in a Financial Times article, it might be up to $100 trillion, this transition for the global economy over the next 10 years. And it's one of those things where you might have to spend $1 trillion a year if you start today, 10 trillion if you start in 5 years, and 100 trillion if you start in 25 years.
Right.
We are just ramping up the costs with time. So it's not the economy is on, or material consumption growth is on a collision course with the planet. And in the end, the planet will be fine. As many folks have remarked here in New York, and there was a great event on the planetary boundaries, the sort of the first planetary health check, which is another project Planet is supporting. And basically, the first visit of the Earth to the doctor. And it was a year that they've been tracking this stuff. So it was the first time they did a report. How's the health of the Earth on these 9 planetary variables? And the answer is it's in a danger zone. It's like you come back with a high cholesterol. You need to work on it. Like you're not actually at a heart attack stage, but this is time to revisit your lifestyle. That's what the Earth just heard, and we're trying to underpin that. And somebody rightly said, the planet is going to be fine no matter what. The only question is, how's the life, i.e. us, going to do? The planet has survived lots of things. There'll probably be lots of bacteria, but how's the rest of humans and the rest of advanced life going to do in this? And that's what we've got to care about.
Yeah. You also today are just announcing a BeZero partnership. Can you share more about what that is?
Yeah, actually, we've partnered with BeZero. They're leveraging our forest carbon product. So we actually, a year ago, released the first version of it that was at 30-meter resolution, so based on Landsat data. It's the first way we could get it calibrated well. And they've been playing with that data, and now they're going into the 3-meter data. By the way, we also announced public pricing for that. So it's very easy to get going, very low cost per hectare or per square kilometer.
For the forest carbon monitoring.
For the forest carbon monitoring. And our point of putting that out publicly is so that people can plan on that, right?
Exactly.
The people that are building carbon markets systems can plan that out. So we've got the American Forest Foundation, Veritree, and a number of other folks starting to lose this, and a lot of interest in leveraging that data set.
Great. And then yet another announcement today as well. You're revealing the first images from one of your satellites?
Yes. So Tanager, very excitingly, first hyperspectral instrument we've ever launched. So what hyperspectral imagery is, it's a spectrometer on board, imaging spectrometer. So it produces images just like a normal picture, but they have 420 actually, spectral bands of colors, really narrow. So eyes have 3, obviously, RGB, and they're about 100 or 150 nanometers wide of the color, each color band.
Ours or the...
Ours.
Yeah.
This satellite has 420 that are each about 5 nanometers wide.
Wow.
So it's like you've got about 30 greens, 30 different shades of green, 30 different shades of reds, 30 different shades of blue. And then it continues into the infrared, and it continues into the UV. And so from roughly 300 nanometers all the way to a couple of microns, we have 400 of these spectral bands. Now, why are we doing all that?
Right.
It's cool tech, but that's not enough, obviously. By the way, we believe this is the most sensitive spectrometer that's ever been put into orbit.
Wow.
Or certainly or the most sensitive one that's in orbit that we're aware of. And it's pretty exciting. Releasing the first data from that mission today, and we just released one picture, and it happens to be over Pakistan. We've shown a few false color images where we've picked a few of these bands and showed one in the visual, one in the near infrared spectrum, one in the shortwave infrared, and then a visualization of the entire stack. So you get a sense of this data cube, as we call it. So, X and Y on the ground, and then all these spectral bands as the Z-axis, 420. The point of doing that is that by this sensitive instrument, it can measure sensitively things like gas emissions. So this case, the canonical use case is detecting methane sources. And the goal is to be able to detect these gas emissions. And that's because they have an absorption feature in a particular one of these spectral bands. And if you have small and narrow enough spectral bands, you can detect that. And as we fly overhead, you can triangulate roughly how much gas is coming out of a particular emission spot. A gas leak, an agricultural facility, a waste facility, a refinery. We'll be able to estimate the amount of methane and pinpoint the emission because we can get it down to the 30-meter level.
Wow.
So we'll be able to say, it's this facility.
Wow.
It's not like here, it's somewhere in this town or in this region. Here's this facility. So lots of different use cases, but methane monitoring, and we're going to be releasing a digital product, a digital public good with that methane piece of it. So an interpretation of some of this just around methane detection of the whole world, all the sources we're looking at every month. But this data set is useful for a lot of other things. Biodiversity monitoring, because of all those greens that I mentioned, you can pick out the type of the species of tree or grass or anything. Now, a 30-meter scale, so you can't see the ants in all the detail or something. But compositely, you'll get all the different, and you can deconvolve those. And in fact, I mean, one of the most exciting things, AI is all over the place, and space is no exception. In fact, space is really like a sector that's producing incredible data sets that AI is going mad on. And both of these announcements involve AI. So the first one, the forest carbon, is leveraging an AI tool that estimates this carbon with all these different inputs, LiDAR. And this one is an AI field day. I mean, having 400 spectral bands, you can ratio them all in these different ways and pull out different chemical signatures.
Wow.
I mean, it's just it's going to be an incredible data set for biodiversity, carbon, like CO2 and methane, gas monitoring, and lots of other things.
Yeah. So collectively, we're entering into a new paradigm where we can have more accurate, more real-time monitoring of not only planet's health, but also these types of methane emissions or leaks or different toxic pollutants that are being released into the environment. And this obviously has the implications of economic incentives for good behavior, regulation, policing for bad behavior, just kind of tightening the lid on all these different ways that the system is damaging the earth.
100%. And methane has been one of those areas where we haven't done very well. It's not been one of the big focus areas of public policy.
And remind us why methane is so important.
Because it's one of the most driving forcing functions on global warming. And it's estimated to be around 60 times more potent in terms of its climate forcing per kilogram of methane than CO2. There's less of it, but it's 60 times more potent. I mean, there's scientists disagree a little bit exactly about what the multiple is. It lasts less time in the atmosphere, so it comes down faster, but we're producing a lot of it and we kind of ignored it. Not quite. And there was, of course, scientists that were talking about this for a while, but in the public debate and at the political level, very little attention until very recently. And so considering it's a significant driver, and also that these leaks are things that both industry wants to stop because they don't want leaks either. They're a gas pipeline. They don't want a gas leak. And it's terrible for the environment. Win-win, let's solve this. And so it's also a low-hanging fruit in some aspects of it.
Last question. I mean, 2024, you're obviously witnessing so many converging, accelerating exponential technologies, between what you're doing with the satellites in space, what you mentioned with the AI, you're deeply entrenched in Silicon Valley. You're witnessing the convergence of so much. For someone who it just feels dizzying how much is happening, paint us a picture of kind of where do you view this all going, or what are some of your hopeful visions for where we wake up 5-10 years from now?
Well, it is dizzying. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, so much. I used to, 20 years ago, I felt like I could predict what was happening in the space sector, my area of expertise more than space technology. Relatively good precision. Like, well, we'll have a few more of these kind of satellites, this kind of data. There'll be a little bit of change over here, a little bit of improvements over there. Now I have no freaking idea. No idea. Because AI is changing everything. It is changing everything. And as I said, I mean, space in many ways in this particular game has got a lot to offer. I mean, anyone with a stack of data that's interesting about anything is an AI field day.
Right.
And we've got the most, one of the most amazing data sets to play. 2,700 images for every point in the landmass of the Earth to, have your world's your oyster, literally. And so that's exciting. But more broadly, look, it is dizzying, the change and the pace, and no one can predict what's going to happen, especially near term with AGI and what is it. What I'm most hopeful and excited about is the raw potential of that to help us with the challenges we're speaking about today, climate and the environment. I take one example that I'm so excited about, which is if you take our 2,700 layers for every point in the landmass of multispectral imagery, and you pair that with deep data sets about biodiversity in specific areas where we've mapped it really carefully. Like there's a place I was in Panama on my holiday over the Christmas break where, the Smithsonian Institute has had an institute there for decades, studying every ant to every monkey and everything in between, And so they know what the populations are like. So in detailed places, we have a few spots like that.
Right.
Most of the rest of the world, we have no idea.
Right.
But between that and the AI and our data set, those two data sets and AI should be able to sort of map where at the detailed level, where all the biodiversity is. I mean, take the acoustic data, eDNA, a few other things. You should be able to map all that. That is an amazing problem.
Yeah.
Now, all the AI geeks are focused on AGI.
Right.
And I keep on saying, come on, guys. Like, I mean, AGI is cool. But then the reason they're focused on it, like, AGI will solve all the other problems. Right. So let's get there. And I kind of get that logic. I understand philosophically why they're bent on that. But meanwhile, you have these wicked challenges. Can't you help medicine, climate, and education at the same time? And I actually think it will hone these capabilities. And I also think, by the way, the markets are going to drive a lot of that because a lot of these startups, people are going to go, come on, guys, stop chasing this big thing. We know that's cool, but where's the real value? Right. They're going to say, where's the real value in terms of monetary terms? But it's the same in the sense that it will drive people to have real world applications. And I think that this is an area where AI, again, there's one project. I think the best use of AI that I personally use day to day is not ChatGPT. It's an app called Merlin, which you can hold out and listen, and any bird it hears, it will identify what species it is, which is freaking amazing. And then, by the way, you can talk back to it, and bird watchers have different degrees of how much they like this feature. Because some are like, well, you're interfering, you're chatting with these birds, maybe they don't like it, you're confusing them or something. And others are like, no, come on, it enables me to interact. Because what happens is you play the sounds and then they come down and they're like, oh, there's another bird in town. Let me go and have a look. Yeah. Who's that? Maybe I want to mate with them or whatever. And it's enabling that interaction with life. That is amazing. And you, of course, know about the Earth Species Project, which is a natural extension of that. And ours is the sort of an Ask Gaia is another way of putting Queryable Earth. It's ask the planet, what's going on, right? How are you doing? Large language models and foundation models, once we start deploying them on our data set, I think enable that, right? And that, to Peter Singer's sort of increasing empathy circles, will help us tremendously. So what a beautiful situation that AI can help us get closer to all the other species on the planet. And, a real challenge. We're here in New York and it's a concrete jungle, right?
Totally.
This is not where humans grew up, and we've lost our ability to sense nature. We don't even, water comes out the tap, food comes in a box from Amazon, and you never the wiser about where it comes from. And electricity just turns on. All of those systems rely on nature in varying ways.
Right.
And we just are so abstracted from it. And this is a tool that can help us get back connected with nature. And that's important because, of course, we need to value nature. And we are so screwed if we don't. The people talk about nature-based services, half the economy being dependent on them. We discussed before, I don't like that term because I think it should have intrinsic value. But like that's what's at stake if you even think about it, not philosophically, just mercurially, like economically, you would say that would be dumb. Don't waste away nature. You're going to lose half your economy. That would be a bad strategy, economically. And so everyone can agree it would be bad to ditch half the economy. And it's worse than that. It really is worse than that. But at the very least, it's that.
Always fun to talk to you, Will. I know you have to get out, and I think you're giving a speech around the corner, so we'll cut it there. For more information about the forest carbon monitoring product, go to planet.com for more great conversations like this one, and we'll be publishing a lot from here at New York Climate Week. Just go to maearth.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.